Do we have Utsav with us now? Utsav Sanduja? Okay, I think we've lost that connection, unfortunately, with Utsav Sanduja as well. Let's now turn our focus to more news, of course, coming in regarding this Trump presidency. The big inaugural ceremony, of course, is all set to commence very, very shortly. Donald Trump is all set to return to the White House. He secured a thumping victory over Kamala Harris, of course, in the election in November. His comeback was undoubtedly a rare moment in the annals of history. He defied assassination attempts, criminal convictions, and a change in his political opponent. But that's not all. Donald Trump is the second president in the US's 200-plus year history to have come to power, lost the re-election, and then won again. Now, the star-studded ceremony in the Capitol in Washington shall host former US presidents, world leaders, as well as tech titans. But also on focus is Donald Trump's equation with China. What is going to be the equation of the US with China in his presidency? He's repeatedly threatened to further impose 10% tariffs on Beijing. However, interestingly, invited Xi Jinping to his inaugural. Although the Chinese president is not attending the ceremony in Washington, he has sent his deputy. That's not all. Trump also dialed Xi Jinping and discussed a host of issues, including trade, TikTok, and fentanyl. How is all of this likely to play out is something we're going to be focusing on with our guests. Joining us live is Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, former diplomat. We also have Major General SP Asthana joining us live, strategic analyst. Vijay Kranti, Chairman Chase, is live with us. Namrata Hasija, Center for China Analysis and Strategy, is also joining us live. Jayant Krishna, Senior Fellow, CSIS, is also live with us on the broadcast. Ambassador Kapoor, a lot of priority areas, a lot of focus areas, but how's the US's equation going to be with China?
Well, that's going to be a very important factor because Trump is going to, I guess, play the carrot and stick policy with China. He is going to continue discussing with them and at the same time threaten tariffs and other measures. Strategically, it's going to be a very difficult aspect because for them to manage the freedom of navigation in the South China Seas, East China Seas, and the Strait of Malacca, etc. China has been, threatening those lanes. So, how is he going to cope with that? China has been also making it very difficult for the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Marines, and creating problems for Philippines and all their other neighbors in terms of aggression, in terms of land grab, creating islands. So there are a whole lot of issues. And in all these issues, he is going to also depend on greater collaboration with his allies and partners, including Japan, including Australia. India is going to be an important part of the whole story because if India and the US are able to work together, then of course it'll be a lot easier for him to deal with China and take into account how to sort of manage them better, how to lessen the challenges which are arising from China, and how to sort of control them. Thank you.
Major Lasana, how is that relation with China likely to play out in the Trump presidency? He's often spoken about them in his campaign speeches, but now that he's president, how do you see that playing out, particularly the focus on trade, TikTok, and fentanyl?
As I visualize that from the time of Trump 1.0 era, now that he moves on to Trump 2.0, he has learned a lot of lessons. When COVID happened, he knew that the dependency and over dependency of US on China is quite dangerous, and therefore China would remain on his focus as the potential threat, as the biggest challenge. At the same time, need to diversify from China, and India certainly puts a bill on that issue. Also, to handle China, there is a need for stronger relations with India. In fact, if you recall, as far as Americans' relation earlier used to be very good with Pakistan, but the one major factor which brought US and India together was the China threat and the China factor and the Indo-Pacific strategy. So that factor has not changed. And therefore, even when he moves on to Trump 2.0, he would certainly look at that from that point of view. Transactional relationship certainly will be there. He would certainly like to get the best of China as far as the trade is concerned. Also, we need to remember he has got the mandate to make America great again, or to reform the internal things of America and economic condition of America within itself. And therefore, for that, he needs China to some extent. So therefore, some gestures which you found that Xi Jinping being invited and his team declaring that he would be very soon interacting with President Xi Jinping as well as India, and all such gestures would certainly be there. But he is going to make very strong deals. Tariffs, as we know, that he has already threatened a fair amount of tariffs on almost all countries and especially on China. Uh, and India is also no exception. So, as far as tariff is concerned, I think it will be a standard policy, everybody making no exceptions to friends or otherwise. Interestingly, I must tell you that uh, there is a survey carried out by European Council of Foreign Affairs. In that, the question was as to how the Trump presidency is going to be, whether is good, bad for the world, bad for your country, bad for peace. And you will be surprised. The topmost position when was that India was most favorable, number one. China was also favorable. And so was the case with Russia. And the countries which were totally unfavorable or were not very happy with that was led by UK, European Union, and South Korea. So this I visualize that his focus would be Indo-Pacific. The collective West will face some kind of challenges as we go along, and they are already reasonably nervous, apparently. So that's how I visualize his dealing with China. Certainly, the diversification of China will be there on his mind, and making and ensuring that
Yes.
American market doesn't become hostage to China would certainly be
Stay
there
with
on
us.
his mind.
Stay with us. Stay with us. I want to quickly join Vijay Kranti at this point as well. Vijay Kranti, if we talk about this equation with China, if we talk about this relationship with China, which way is it headed under the Trump tenure? Is there going to be a different Donald Trump from what we saw in his campaign speeches to what it is now? And of course, the presidency role. Interestingly, he did reach out to Xi Jinping to come and attend his swearing in.
As far as China is concerned, I think there is one more field where which we cannot ignore, is that in the days of Democratic Party, China had almost a free field, a free hand in many issues of international issues, and especially China has been playing its own game, sometimes openly, sometimes behind, on in Russia-Ukraine war. Don't forget that it was Xi Jinping who goaded Putin to start this war. And also in the Middle East, we can expect that the new influence of America, because of Donald Trump's presence, is going to reduce the play field of China in international, particularly such affairs. That is one thing. And secondly, I see that the role of deep state in America has been playing a very horrible role for America's interest itself, because uh, the way White House has been playing to the gallery and looking after more interests of the leftists, that is going to change drastically now. So we can expect that the role of deep state is not only going to reduce, uh, it is, I think, going to slide back very badly, especially badly for the leftist lobbies in America. They are going to suffer very heavily the way they had made inroads into universities, into intelligentsia, into media, and anything which is opinion controlling or opinion making instruments of the American system, the role of deep state and the leftists is going to reduce drastically, I can imagine, in very near future. So that is a very big hope, not only for America itself, even a hope for friends like India and all those countries which have been suffering because of this, the deep state activities or dominance of deep state
Even as you
in the
say that,
American
even as
system.
you say that, these pictures are coming in. Last day in office for the president and vice president, they were just posing for a photo up there. I presume these are live visuals coming in of Joe Biden, Jill Biden, Kamala Harris, and a husband there in the United States. Okay, yes, back to you, Vijay Kranti.
Yeah. So now I can expect that China, that America is going to play a very new role in number one in the major tense situations like the Ukraine and Russia war in the Middle East, and which is going to reduce working space and influence of China in a reasonably big way. So that is one positive thing which I expect. And then, of course, one thing good about Trump is that he is very open. You can, even if many people say that he is unpredictable, his unpredictability is quite transparent also. So you can even predict his unpredictability on many, many issues. He is a transactional man. Many people were thinking that India will suffer, India's business will be, affected negatively. But I think India knows very well how to deal with a transactional kind of person and a government. India was not able to deal with the democratic America, with the just gone out government, because they were controlled by the deep state, and deep state would never let you, number one, let you settle down on anything. They won't let you gain any ground, especially as long as the Modi government is there. So I think India should be looking for very good days, better days, as far as our relations with America is concerned. And the world should hope that the influence of China in international affairs is going to reduce significantly. Over to you, Dave.
Do you agree, Namrata Hasita? The fact is that how the US-China relationship progresses will have its ramifications on the India relationship of the US as well. Also, as far as the trade tariffs decision as well, vis-a-vis China, do you believe that also could be a model for other countries as well, followed by Donald Trump?
Thank you for your question, Uday. First question that you asked, that whether India-China improving relation will impact India-US relation. First of all, I don't think India-China relationship is, improving. Yes, there's a
No, the
positive
US
step.
China relationship, how that progresses, will that affect the US India relationship as well?
Okay, because most of the panelists have spoken about India being the factor and everything. Your second question, I think, is very important about the sanctions, and I want to like bring into this debate, the Chinese perspective, because the Chinese are actually preparing for the worsening of China-US relations. Now, why I'm saying that is, there's been a paper, a study that was published in, by People's Liberation Army, that is PLA's Colonel Wan Wei Ing. He's an associate professor at the Military Management College of the NDU. Now, he wrote this article on 7th November, the day Trump victory was, announced. And the title of his paper is "The Impact of US Sanctions on China and China's Countermeasures." Now, he goes up to a step where he's actually saying that the Chinese military think tanks should come together and think about possible responses, and to the US sanctions and to the worsening of US China relationship, because Trump is back in power. Now, he also says that China has not fully understood US sanctions in the past and lack of responding countermeasures and tools. And this time they should be better prepared because Trump 2.0 is going to be worse for US China relationship, than it was during his first presidency. Now, there have been other academicians. I mean, this is a very long article, and that is why I mentioned two very important points. So he's particularly asked the Chinese military think tanks to formulate a response. Then there have been academicians who've been writing, and the first thing they say is that China should fight the dollar supremacy, and we should prepare for worst US sanctions that are going to come. None of the academicians, not even one, has written that the US China relationship will get better under Trump. In fact, they have spoke. I mean, they have written, and especially I'll mention here Wang Hung, who's a professor at Peking University School of International Relations. He says that Trump is going to further raise tariff. He will play the Taiwan issue, and he will form military alliances in the Asia Pacific or Indo Pacific region. So, China should be prepared for it, and he's not the only one. So there are so many academicians. There are people from the military think tanks. There are people from the army who are writing in China, and who themselves are saying that the US-China relationship is going to go for worse under Trump. But this time we should be prepared, and they have given many suggestions as to how China can counter the sanctions that will be imposed by Trump government this time. So I think even the Chinese are not hopeful. Majority of them are not hopeful that there will be improvement in the U.S. China relationship, and yes, I mean we have they have he has invited Xi Jinping, but I don't think we should take that as something that will be, that is for the better US China relationship. No, it is not. Even Chinese are preparing this time. So I think we should also think about how the Chinese are preparing, what are the countermeasures, what are they thinking about US China relationship, and they're thinking very negatively about it.
Okay, Jayat Krishna, let me get you in here quickly before I have to take a short break. On this Donald Trump Xi Jinping relationship, where do you see it really headed? Do you believe there has been a patch up in this phone call, in this inaugural invitation, even though interestingly Xi Jinping is not coming?
See, Uday, let us understand, more than the geopolitical relationship between the two largest economies in the world. If you look at the size of these two economies, US and China, it's quite close to each other. US seems to be touching almost $30 trillion, and China seems to be touching almost $20 trillion, And India is, perhaps this year will close at about $4.5 trillion. So we are still far behind. So I think US and China, they see each other as biggest competitors. That's not the case with India. But I think it's from an Indian standpoint, it's very, very important to understand that what kind of a trade relationship which we have with them. The total value of trade between US and India is about $200 billion, and out of which what US imports from India is about $125, and what India imports from the US is about $80 billion. So in other words, US is one of the perhaps the only among major countries with which India has a trade balance in its favor, because it imports less from the US than what it exports to the US. So I think anything that he has talked about 60% tariff barrier for Chinese goods, but now I think what they have said, whatever is the prevalent rate over and above that, 10% for China. I think for India, it still remains to be seen, that what kind of a tariff war would play between the two countries. I think I fundamentally believe, Uday, that in today's day and age, countries don't necessarily get what they deserve. They get what they negotiate. Therefore, right from this stage, when External Affairs Minister Jaishankar is there in the US for the swearing in, and all subsequent bilateral meetings, I think our posturing and our stand has to be very, very clear with the US. So trade issue is one, and second issue to my mind, which is very important, is the visa issue.
Okay.
I think during the entire campaign, he's talked about being playing down on he said that visas would be curtailed, H-1B visas. He talked about at some point, some people in the campaign even talked about getting scrapped. But subsequently, after winning, he said H-1B visas are not all that bad. But what India must try to explain to the
Yes.
USA that by giving more visas to Indians,
Absolutely.
actually Indians keep their economy globally competitive, and we meet their skill deficit.
True.
So it's not that they do any favor to us.
True.
So I think these are a couple of things where we have to be very clear
Yes.
in early negotiations with the US.
Yes. In fact, we have seen also, a couple of flip-flops on that issue of H-1B, and we do hope, of course, that Donald Trump will, get those highly skilled Indians you're talking about. But yes, as you've all mentioned, the relationship with China will perhaps have its ramifications on the US-India relationship as well. We are hoping, of course, that it will be a very robust one. Those, of course, were pictures of Donald Trump and Melania Trump on your screens. The first glimpse of them on this big day for them, the inauguration day. We'll, of course, be keeping a very close watch on this story as our continuous coverage continues of the grand swearing-in ceremony there in the United States of America. For the time being, my thanks to our guests for joining us, slipping into a very short break.